episode 2, we continue the journey tracing how the path from sugar led to slavery and ultimately to resilience and brilliance. During the Gupta dynasty, a quiet revolution took place, one that would change the world forever. Sugar, once a rare commodity, was crystallized into a form that could be easily transported. Trading along with other spices from Asia, these commodities traveled across a vast network known as the Silk Road. From east to west, sweetness became a luxury and a desire. But in 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman and trade was disrupted. Commodities trading between Asia and Europe had gotten too expensive, and Europe needed a new route to Asia. But what could they do? The answer came by way of the sea. Driven by the desire to get around the Ottoman and wanting to reestablish trading with the East, Portugal sends its own Prince Henry to start exploring the Atlantic Ocean and the African coastline. His first venture was to siege the island of Madeira and the Azores off the coast of northwest Africa. By 1452, sugarcane was successfully planted on the island. On Madeira, the climate proved perfect for sugarcane due to having subtropical conditions, including an abundance of rainfall. A large labor force was first made up of by indigenous people, but then soon were replaced by enslaved Africans. By the 15th century, Madeira had become Europe's leading sugar producer, and thus the seed for the transatlantic slave trade had been sown. Slavery itself was not a new phenomenon. Long before ships crossed the Atlantic, systems of human bondage existed in ancient worlds. On the walls of Egypt, the image of man stands holding a mace in his right hand and the hair of a crouching enemy whom is about to be hit. Since antiquity, slaves were prisoners of war, captured in conflict, forced into servitude. But as societies evolved, so did slavery. Debt slavery, also known as indentured servants, emerged, where a person could become enslaved to repay what they owed. Freedom became something that could be lost, not only in battle, but in hardship. There were no universal laws governing how slaves were treated. In many places, slavery took the form of chattel slavery, where people were reduced to property, bought and sold without rights. Yet practices varied. In ancient Egypt, some slaves could marry, even with free people. In ancient China, married slaves were sometimes protected from separation, but their children were not always spared. Different cultures, but a common reality. Across continents, China, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, slavery existed. It was woven into the fabric of ancient societies. But what began as a scattered system of servitude was about to evolve into something far worse, far darker. A global system driven by demand, powered by exploitation, and rooted in part in the world's growing hunger for sugar. An unholy matrimony of all times, sugar and slavery. Pope Eugene IV was the first pope to speak about this unholy matrimony. In 1435, he issued Sicut Dudum, earliest condemnation ordering the release of enslaved people in the Canary Islands under the threat of excommunication. The church began to openly voice its opposition towards slavery, at least when it came to Christians owning Christians. Even worse was the idea of selling fellow Christians to the Muslims, who had already established the largest slave market in the late medieval. The Roman Catholic Church's authority would be challenged from 1517 to 1648 by the Protestant Reformation. By 1688, when the Dutch and German Quakers were in Pennsylvania, they petitioned against the immorality of slavery, challenging fellow friends to uphold Christian principle. In 1483, the Portuguese exploring Africa made contact with the King of Congo. The earliest interaction between the two wasn't commercial or militaristic, but religious. The Portuguese brought Christianity to the Congo. Both countries started trading with each other, with the Congo selling copper, ivory, and captured warriors for goods such as wine, clothes, and guns from Portugal. Portugal continued its exploration throughout Africa, making contacts and forming relationships with other African countries, and monopolized the slave trade while at it. A second player was coming on the scene, and that would be Spain. In 1496, Spain would gain complete control of the Canary Island, an island off the northwest coast of Africa. Spain would create a new economic model for this island based off the cultivation of sugarcane. This decision would require a large labor force made up of indigenous Canarians and the enslaved Africans. The Canary Islands and Madeira were becoming economic success stories. The production of sugar had brought wealth to the islands, and the other European countries took notice. A new explorer would come on the scene by the name of Christopher Columbus. He was determined to find a direct sea route from Europe to Asia. In 1492, he made his first of 4 voyages and discovered the Bahamas, calling it San Salvador, and explored Cuba and Hispaniola. On his second voyage in 1493, with 17 ships and over 1,000 men, Christopher Columbus discovered Dominica, Guadalupe, and Jamaica. In Jamaica, by 1509 under Governor Juan de Esquivel, the Spaniards made formal settlement. Lacking significant gold deposits, Jamaica served primarily as a supply base for food and horses for Spanish expeditions to the American mainland. The Spaniards planted sugarcane in Jamaica, but production was minimal compared to their efforts on other islands. The harsh treatment of the indigenous people on the island of Jamaica would create a decline in their numbers, and to be able to maintain the minimal production, they began importing enslaved people from West Africa. Jamaica was already sparsely populated with a population of only 3,000 to 4,000 by the mid-17th century, including a small number of African. Things would change for Jamaica on May 10, 1655, when Admiral William Penn and General Robert Venables led a successful attack. The Spaniards surrendered to the English, marking the end of 150 years of Spanish control in Jamaica. The freed slaves and their descendants would become known as the Maroons. In Episode 3, we continue on the expansion of capitalistic slave trading through the lens of Jamaica. We will learn more about British subjugation and exploitation. Jamaica will undergo a transformation that will forever hold a grip on the island's future.